The hotel keycard flashed red for the third time just as my phone started ringing. I pinned my laptop bag against the wall with my hip and answered without looking. Mara Ellison. Mrs. Ellison, this is Samuel Reed. I restored your walnut cabinet. My hand stopped halfway back to the lock. Samuel? I'm sorry to call so late. Are you aware it's being auctioned tomorrow? The hallway seemed to tip beneath me. What is? Your cabinet, along with quite a lot of other furniture, apparently. He sent me the auction link while we were still on the phone. The first photograph loaded one slow strip at a time on the hotel's weak Wi-Fi. There was my dining room. Strangers stood around my grandmother's table with bidding sheets in their hands. White tags hung from the ladder-back chairs. My brass reading lamp had a lot number taped across its shade. In the corner, my mother-in-law raised a champagne glass beside the walnut cabinet. My husband had opened our home to bidders. Samuel, I said, how did you know it was mine? Because I put the butterfly patch in the back. The ice machine dropped a load at the far end of the hall. I watched the photograph sharpen until I could see Celeste's mouth curved around a toast. Samuel lowered his voice. Mara, where are you? Baltimore. And Grant? In my house. A door opened behind me. A man in a bathrobe stepped out carrying an empty bucket, saw my face, and retreated without getting ice. Bidding begins at 10 tomorrow, Samuel said. I thought you should know. I finally got the hotel door open. My room smelled faintly of industrial lemon and somebody else's shower steam. The bed was covered with training binders from the restaurant opening, neat stacks I had planned to study before sleeping. I swept them onto the floor and set my laptop down. How did you even find the listing? A client sent it to me. He collects regional pieces. The auction house is describing your cabinet as Pennsylvania, circa 1860, restored by Samuel Reed Furniture Conservation. They used my name. Is it worth that much? The listing showed an estimate of $12,000 to $18,000. My grandmother had stored napkins and expired coupons in it. That depends on whether the workshop attribution is right, Samuel said. But that isn't the point. No, it isn't. I clicked through the photographs. Our home had been cleaned more thoroughly for strangers than Grant had cleaned it for me in years. The kitchen counters were bare. The mail tray was gone. Even the basket where we dropped our shoes had vanished. Lot 14 was the dining table and 6 chairs. Lot 19 was the walnut cabinet. Lot 23 was the mahogany bedroom chest. Lot 31 was a pair of brass pharmacy-style reading lamps, though I had only inherited one. The second was a cheaper copy Grant bought online after he complained that my lamp made his side of the bedroom look unfinished. The auction house had paired them anyway. I pressed Grant's name. He answered on the 6th ring with music and voices behind him. Hey, Mayor, everything okay? The normalcy of his tone frightened me more than anger would have. Turn off the music. What? Turn it off. There was a muffled exchange, then the music faded. I heard Celeste laugh in the background. Grant said, Okay, what happened? I'm looking at Lot 19. Silence. Not confusion, not even a guilty question. Just silence arriving fully formed. Then he exhaled. Who called you? That was the moment the floor settled. Until then, some small, stupid part of me had been searching for the clerical error. A confused address, a charity event, a staging company with an astonishing commitment to authenticity. You auctioned my furniture. It's not an auction yet. There are people in our house. It was a preview. My mother-in-law is drinking champagne beside my grandmother's cabinet. Mom brought one bottle. You're making it sound like we hired a band. I stared at the photograph of Celeste. She wore the blue silk blouse I had helped her return twice before she found the correct size. I had driven it to her condominium after work because she didn't trust package lockers. Take the tags off everything, I said. Call the auction company. Cancel it. We can talk about this. We are talking. Not like this. You're tired, you're in a hotel, and Samuel Reed clearly called you hoping to create drama because they used his name. So you do know who called. He was quiet again. Behind him, a woman said, Grant, the pear tart is getting warm. Celeste. Of course she had brought dessert. In her mind, every trespass became hospitality if she arrived holding pastry. Grant covered the phone, but I still heard him say, "Give me a minute, Mom." "You told her Samuel called me?" I guessed. "You guessed his full name?" "Mara. Did you call him before you listed the cabinet?" "No, because I didn't list it as his. His name is in the description. That's the auctioneer's language. They research these things." I scrolled farther down the listing. Consignor, private collection, Hawthorne, Virginia, private collection. As if our house had quietly become a dead person's estate. "How much do you expect to make?" "It varies." "How much, Grant?" "The estimates add up to around 48, but estimates aren't guarantees." My breath came out as a laugh. "You know the total." "Obviously, I know the total." I signed paperwork. There it was, clean and irreversible. I sat on the edge of the bed. "You signed paperwork saying you owned my cabinet?" "I signed as the homeowner. That wasn't my question. You and I are married. It's in our house. Half these pieces have been part of our life together for 11 years. My grandmother left them to me. And they're furniture, Mara. They're not sacred relics." The crescent beneath the cabinet's left door flashed in my mind. My grandmother used to hook one finger behind the small brass pull and brace her ring against the wood. Over decades, the gold had worn a pale curve into the walnut. Samuel had offered to blend it when he restored the finish. I had asked him not to. Grant knew that. He had been standing beside me in Samuel's workshop when I said it. "What is the money for?" "We'll discuss that when you're home." "I'll be home tomorrow afternoon. You said Friday." I changed my mind. "Mara, don't leave the opening because you're upset. Pauline is relying on you." The reflex was almost elegant. He had reached through the phone, found my sense of duty, and tried to use it as a lock. "Pauline has 3 regional managers and a functioning restaurant," I said. "You have until I get home to cancel the auction. Mayor, please don't issue ultimatums before you understand what's happening. Then tell me." Celeste's voice drifted closer. "Is she threatening to abandon her job now?" Grant said, "Mom, please." I stood. "Put her on." "Well, that's not going to help." "Put her on." There was rustling, followed by Celeste's bright public voice. "Hello, sweetheart. I'm sorry you were startled." Startled is when a balloon pops. I told Grant you should have been brought into the conversation earlier. Earlier than strangers touching my underwear drawers. The bedroom chest was emptied. That helps enormously. She sighed with the patience of a woman waiting for a waiter to understand sparkling water. "No one is trying to hurt you. These pieces have value, and right now there is a practical need. Grant believed, perhaps optimistically, that you would see the sense in it once everything was organized." "What practical need?" "That's private." "You're selling my belongings in my house. Grant's house, too. What do you need $48,000 for?" "The building assessment is $62," I closed my eyes. Celeste's condominium occupied the 8th floor of Bellwether House, a creamstone building with brass elevators and a lobby that smelled like lilies. She had bought it after Grant's father died, ignoring everyone who suggested something smaller. For 6 years, she had complained about association fees, garage fees, window fees, and the scandalous cost of maintaining a roof 8 floors above her head. "What happened to your reserve fund?" I asked. There were circumstances. The kitchen circumstances with the Italian tile? That renovation increased the property value. The bathroom. "I am not submitting my personal spending for an audit." "But you submitted my furniture for auction." Her voice sharpened. "This is exactly why Grant was afraid to tell you. You turn help into an indictment." I almost answered. Then I caught on one word. "Afraid?" Celeste went quiet. I took the phone away from my ear and looked at Grant's name glowing above the call timer. 11 years of marriage, reduced to the strange discovery that my husband had been afraid to ask me before selling what was mine, but not afraid to let buyers walk through my home. "Give him back the phone." Grant returned with a weary, irritated, Hey, how long have you been planning this? A few weeks. I remembered the tape measure on his dresser. The afternoon he asked whether my grandmother's chest had ever been appraised, the sudden interest Celeste had taken in the story of the cabinet. 3 weeks earlier, she had stood in our dining room rubbing one thumb over the pale crescent. Funny, she'd said. One woman can leave marks all over a house long after she's gone. I thought she meant the wear in the wood. Maybe she had meant me. Cancel it, I said. I can't do it tonight. The office is closed. Call the auctioneer. He's at dinner. He let people into our home, interrupt his tart. Grant made the soft sound he made when I was being unreasonable in a way he planned to forgive. Even if we withdraw now, there are fees. Significant ones. How significant? I don't know exactly. You signed the contract. It's a percentage plus expenses. And you plan to tell me when? We plan to surprise you with the new furniture. For a second, I couldn't speak. Grant rushed into the opening. Not cheap showroom stuff. We met with a designer. You always say the living room doesn't work for how we use it. We could start fresh, make the house ours instead of living around pieces chosen before either of us was born. And the money for your mother? Some of it would help Mom, yes. How much? We hadn't finalized the split. Celeste said something behind him. 35, Grant admitted. So my inheritance pays her assessment and I get a couch. Why are you saying it like that? Because that's the sentence. He lowered his voice. She could lose the condo. Then she sells the condo. You know what that place means to her. I looked at the listing again. My cabinet stood under professional lighting, its wood dark and luminous. Somebody had opened both doors, exposing the shelves where I kept my grandmother's linen napkins. In the photograph, the shelves were empty except for a folded auction card. You know what that cabinet means to me. It is not the same. Why? Because Mom is alive. The words came out quickly, like something he had practiced and promised himself not to say. Neither of us spoke. Grant tried to take them back by softening his tone. That sounded harsher than I meant. No, it sounded finished. Mara, I'll call you tomorrow. Don't just hang up and start making calls. There are contracts involved. I ended the call. Samuel was waiting when I called him back. I could hear a clock ticking in his workshop and the faint rasp of something being moved across wood. He signed, I said, as homeowner. Does he own the cabinet? No. Can you prove that? I have my grandmother's probate inventory somewhere. Somewhere where? I looked around the hotel room as if the document might have followed me to Baltimore. Home, filing cabinet in the study. Can Grant access it? The filing cabinet, yes. There was a pause. What? I asked. Check whether you have digital copies before you tell him what you need. I opened my laptop. My hands had begun to shake now that no one was arguing with me. Samuel said, when we did the restoration, you emailed me photographs and a copy of the inventory for insurance. I may still have them. May? My records are thorough. My filing system is aspirational. Despite everything, I laughed once. Samuel did too, gently, as if testing whether humor was permitted. Why did you call me? I asked. Really? I told you. A client sent the listing. You could have called the auction house. I did. They said Grant Ellison authorized the use of my restoration record. He didn't have it. No, but he had the cabinet. The number beneath the drawer led them to me. Samuel hesitated. When I heard the address, I remembered you asking me not to remove the ring mark. People don't preserve damage unless it matters. On the screen, my inbox filled with search results from 6 years earlier, restoration estimate, insurance photographs, Samuel's invoice. Then I found the email I had sent him with the subject line, Grandmother Cabinet Documents. 3 attachments sat beneath my message. I downloaded the first. The hotel Wi-Fi crawled. Mara, Samuel said, the auction company opens at 8. If we contact them before bidding, they'll have a chance to handle this quietly. And if they don't? Then I withdraw my authentication. You dispute the ownership in writing. At minimum, they'll have a serious problem selling Lot 19. At minimum? I don't want to promise more than I can control. It was the first honest thing anyone had said to me all evening. The attachment opened. My grandmother's probate inventory appeared, crookedly scanned with the cabinet listed by description beside my name. I stared at it until the words stopped blurring. Then another email arrived. The sender was Grant. The subject line read, "Please read before you do anything." Attached was a scan of the auction contract. I opened it and went directly to his signature. Above it, Grant had certified that he was the sole legal owner of every item on the attached schedule. The schedule was 7 pages long. At the bottom of the final page, beneath my reading lamp and grandmother's bedroom chest, was one more item I hadn't noticed in the photographs. Lot 38. Contents of walnut cabinet, assorted monogrammed linens, and family papers. They had not emptied it after all. "Family papers?" Samuel repeated. I zoomed in on the schedule as if the words might rearrange themselves. My grandmother's recipe book is in there. Some letters, photographs. Grant knows. Are they separately tagged? It just says contents. That may help. How can them being included in a sale help? Because even an auctioneer willing to accept a husband's word about furniture won't want to sell unidentified personal documents. Forward me the contract. I did. Then I read Grant's email. "Mara, I know you're upset, and I understand why seeing the listing before we had a chance to explain made this feel deceptive. Please read the agreement. Canceling the entire sale at this stage could cost us thousands of dollars. That affects both of us. I am asking you not to create financial damage out of anger. I will withdraw the personal papers first thing tomorrow, and we can discuss exempting specific sentimental pieces, including the cabinet, if that is what you truly want. Please get some sleep. We love each other more than we love objects." Grant. He had signed the message with his name, as though tenderness required professional distance. I read the sentence about exempting specific sentimental pieces again. He was offering to let me choose which of my belongings I truly wanted. "I'm forwarding his email too," I told Samuel. "Good." Does this happen often? Husbands selling cabinets behind their wives' backs? People consigning things they don't own? Often enough that reputable auction houses ask questions, rarely with a preview in the owner's dining room. What kind of questions should they have asked? For provenance, proof of purchase, whether there were other interested owners. He sighed. But an attractive house can make people lazy. So can a confident man with a key. I looked at the contract. Grant had listed his cell phone, our address, and an individual bank account I didn't recognize for payment of the proceeds. "Samuel." "Yes?" The money wasn't going into our joint account. He didn't answer immediately. "Save a copy of everything." I downloaded the contract, the catalog, and every photograph. I took screenshots of the listing in case it disappeared. Then I forwarded the files to my work email and the cloud folder where I kept tax records. At 1 a.m, I called Pauline. She answered with, "If the fire suppression inspector moved us again, I'm going to become an arsonist. It's not the restaurant. Mara?" I told her enough to explain why I needed to leave. I expected sympathy. Pauline offered logistics. "Take the first train," she said. "Reese can run the morning training. Send me your vendor notes before you go. I can stay through breakfast setup. You'll be staring at your phone and frightening the new servers. Go." "I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing for something your husband did. Save your apologies for when you deserve them." By 2, I had packed. By 3, I had unpacked half my suitcase looking for a charger that was already in my purse. I slept for 47 minutes with the bedside lamp on and dreamed someone had painted my grandmother's cabinet white. Samuel called at 7:58. "I found your file." I sat up. "All of it?" "Work order, invoice, intake photographs, your inventory copy, and the original receipt." "What original receipt?" "The cabinet's workshop receipt. You brought it folded inside the recipe book." I remembered a thin brown paper covered in looping ink. the price written in dollars that seemed impossibly small. Samuel had placed it between sheets of archival paper and made a digital copy. Does it prove it's mine? It supports the chain of ownership. Your grandmother's name isn't on the oldest receipt, obviously, but her probate inventory is clear. My invoice is in your name, and my intake photographs show the cabinet in your old apartment. My old apartment. The narrow place above a florist where the radiator shrieked every winter. Grant had helped carry the cabinet up 2 flights before we were married. At the first landing, he had rested his forehead against the door and said, "Your grandmother built this thing out of spite." I had laughed until I nearly dropped my end. "Send everything to me," I said. "It's on the way. I'm calling the auction company at 8. Put me on the call. The auctioneer, Henry Vale, answered with the strained courtesy of a man already aware that his morning had gone wrong. His voice was lower than I expected. He asked for the lot numbers, then asked whether Grant and I were legally separated. No. Is he currently residing at the Hawthorne property? Yes. And the property is jointly owned? The house is. The inherited furniture isn't. Henry said, Mr. Ellison represented himself as authorized to consign the household contents. He represented himself as the sole legal owner. I have the contract. Silence hummed across the line. Samuel said, Henry, my restoration number is being used to support your cabinet attribution. I did not provide that information for this sale, and my records identify Mrs. Ellison as the owner. Henry's tone tightened. We located the number and spoke with a former shop assistant who confirmed your numbering format. That assistant was not authorized to authenticate my work. I understand. I don't think you do. Your listing says restored by Samuel Reed. Until this dispute is resolved, you may not use my name to market it. Henry asked us to hold. A clipped string arrangement began playing directly into my headache. When he returned, he had lost some of his polish. Lot 19 is suspended. So is Lot 38. I'll need Mrs. Ellison to submit her ownership documentation and a signed dispute notice. We'll remove both from online bidding while counsel reviews them. What about the table, chairs, chest, and lamp? I asked. If you can provide evidence those were inherited, identify the lots in your notice. I can. The remaining items will proceed as scheduled. The preview took place in my home without my permission. Mr. Ellison is an owner and resident of the premises. He authorized access. He also signed that he owned things he doesn't own. And we are responding to that issue. I could hear paper shifting near his phone. Henry was not embarrassed. He was containing damage. I want the entire auction stopped. I don't have grounds to suspend jointly owned property because one spouse objects to a sale authorized by the other. Samuel cut in before I could answer. Henry, did your staff examine the contents of the cabinet? They cataloged them as a group. Did they review the papers? I'm not going to discuss internal procedure. Then you don't know whether you photographed private documents and made them available for public inspection. Another silence. Henry cleared his throat. I'm suspending the sale until noon while we review the consignment. That is not a cancellation. Mrs. Ellison, send your notice within the hour. By 8:23, the auction page carried a gray banner. Bidding temporarily paused. It should have felt like victory. Instead, I sat on the hotel bed in yesterday's clothes, filling out a dispute form while Grant called every 4 minutes. His 5th call came as I boarded the train. I answered and placed my suitcase in the rack. You stopped the auction, he said, temporarily. Henry called me at 8:12 like I'm some kind of thief. You signed that you were the sole owner. That's standard contract language. Then standard language has meaning. Do you know what the withdrawal fee is? Good morning to you too. $8,000, Mara. A man across the aisle glanced up from his newspaper. For furniture that hasn't sold, marketing expenses, photography, staffing, loss of commission. I tried to tell you there were consequences. You tried to make the consequences my fault. Our fault if you forced them to cancel. Whose bank account is on the contract?" He stopped. "I'm looking at it," I said. "Commonwealth Bank, ending in 1442. I've never seen that account. It's mine." "Since when?" "A while." "How long is a while? Why does that matter right now?" "Because you were sending the proceeds there. It has a better rate than our checking account. A better rate for the 12 hours before you gave your mother $35,000? His breathing changed. I pictured him in the kitchen, pressing his fingers between his eyebrows. I had seen that gesture across tax returns, broken appliances, and every dinner where Celeste said something cruel enough to require translation afterward. "You are trying to make responsible decisions sound sinister," he said. "You held a party in our house while I was away." It wasn't a party. There was champagne and pear tart. Mom brought food for the auction staff. She toasted. To what? "I wasn't there, Grant. That's the problem." He spoke more softly. She was relieved. The assessment has been hanging over her for months. "And you've known for months." "Yes." "How much have you already given her?" "This isn't the time." "How much?" "About 11,000. The train doors closed. A recorded voice told us to keep personal belongings in sight. I almost laughed at the timing, but something heavy had settled behind my ribs. From where? "My savings." "Your savings pay the contractors when we renovate. You said that was why I covered the monthly bills." "It is. We haven't renovated anything in 18 months. I was rebuilding the balance. For your mother. She needed help. So did the house. The roof repair went on my credit card. I've been making payments toward that." He had transferred $500 twice and mentioned it enough that the payment seemed larger in memory. The train began to move. "Cancel the sale," I said. "I'm asking for 1 hour. Let me go through the list and separate what's clearly yours. We can still sell the pieces we bought together." "No, we don't need half of it. You don't get to sell half our house because your mother chose a condominium she can't afford. If the sale proceeds, we avoid the withdrawal fee. And if it doesn't?" He waited too long. "What did you do?" I asked. "I paid Mom's assessment deadline from the renovation account." The scenery outside the window blurred into brick and rusted fencing. All of it? The first installment. 24,000. Our renovation account held 31. Most of it had come from the annual bonuses I deposited, while Grant covered what he called project costs. You said 11. That was before the installment. So 35,000. It will be replaced by the auction. There it was. The sale wasn't help he hoped to give Celeste. It was reimbursement for money already gone. You spent it before you told me. We were always going to update the furniture. We once talked about replacing the couch, and the dining room doesn't function. It functioned well enough for your preview. He said my name in warning. I watched my reflection shiver in the train window. What happens when the second assessment installment comes due? We'll deal with it. Meaning I will. That's unfair. I'm looking at the math. I am trying to keep my mother in her home. And what are you trying to keep me in? He had no answer ready. That hurt more than if he had found one. At 11:30, Henry emailed. The auction company would release all inherited items from the sale pending verification, but intended to resume bidding on 12 remaining lots at 2. Grant had provided receipts showing that those pieces had been purchased during our marriage. Attached was a revised catalog, our living room sofa, 2 end tables, the guest room bed, the newer brass lamp, the kitchen island stools, a rug Grant had spent 3 months choosing and afterward claimed not to care about. I called Henry. I object to all of them being sold. I understand. No, you keep saying that while doing the opposite. Mr. Ellison has asserted an ownership interest and instructed us to proceed. So have I, and I've instructed you not to. That creates a dispute between you and your husband. It does not establish that he lacks authority to sell. Then don't hold the auction inside my house. The remaining lots have been moved to our gallery. When? This morning. While I was on a train arguing about paperwork, Grant had sent movers into the house. I called him. He declined the call. A message appeared instead. You left me no choice. I changed the banking password because I can't risk you draining funds while you're angry. We'll talk when you get home. I opened our banking app. My password failed. At that exact moment, the revised auction page refreshed. Photographs of our sofa and tables appeared against the auction gallery's white wall, stripped of the rooms where we had used them. The inherited cabinet was no longer in the catalog, but in the final photograph of Lot 31, beside the cheap brass lamp, I could see the edge of a moving blanket and a pale curved mark in dark walnut. They had moved the cabinet, too. Henry, look at the last photograph of Lot 31. I'm looking. Behind the lamp. A pause. What am I supposed to be seeing? The cabinet you assured me was released. That appears to be a moving pad. The brown stripe is walnut. The pale mark is where my grandmother's ring wore through the finish. Henry inhaled through his nose. I'll check with the gallery staff. Check while I'm on the phone. I cannot walk through a secured preparation area while conducting a client call. Then call me from the preparation area. He hung up. Samuel answered before the first ring finished. I'm 20 minutes from Vale's gallery, he said. I was already heading there. Why? To see whether my mark had been removed from the revised catalog. It has. That's something. The cabinet is in the background of another photograph. His truck made a low, rattling sound beneath his voice. I'll call when I see it, he said. Don't let them move it again. I'm a furniture restorer, Mara. I have no enforcement powers. You have a truck. That is how restorers project authority. I gripped the phone hard enough to hurt my fingers. Samuel, I'll find it. The train was 9 minutes late outside Alexandria, then 12. I watched the clock advance toward 2, while a row of warehouses sat motionless beyond the glass. At 1:34, Henry called. The cabinet was transported in error. With the papers still inside? We have not opened it. Then how do you know the papers are inside? I don't. Where are the table, chairs, chest, and lamp? At the gallery, segregated from the active lots. And lot 38? The linens and papers are in a sealed archival carton. Who packed them? Our staff. People went through my family papers after I objected? Our staff secured the contents. Mrs. Ellison, I recognize that you are distressed, but every item is accounted for. Samuel Reed is on his way. I'm aware. He has called twice. Release my property to him. We require a signed authorization and identification. I'll send both. Release is also contingent upon payment of transport and handling expenses. You moved it after I disputed ownership. Mr. Ellison authorized the original transport. Charge Mr. Ellison. Contractually, the consignor account is responsible. How you and your husband divide that obligation is not for me to determine. There seemed to be no sentence Henry couldn't turn into an invoice. I completed the authorization form from my phone, signed it with one finger, and attached a photograph of my driver's license. Samuel sent me a picture at 1:53. The cabinet stood in a concrete loading bay between a marble-top dresser and 6 stacked banquet chairs. Blue pads wrapped its sides. The doors had been tied shut with cotton tape. On the floor beside it sat a white carton labeled Ellison Personal. Seeing it there made something inside me go oddly quiet. Samuel called. There's a fresh scrape on the right foot, he said. How bad? Cosmetic. I'm documenting it. Can you take everything? The cabinet, carton, table, chairs, chest, and lamp, yes. Not in one trip. Take the cabinet and papers first. I agree. In the background, Henry said, We need the release signed at the desk. Samuel lowered his voice. The active auction has been pushed to 3. Henry's counsel is here. Because of me? Because Grant certified clean title to a cabinet he didn't own, included personal papers, and sent disputed property to the gallery after being notified. You contributed. Is it going to stop? I don't know. At 2:40, while the train was pulling into Union Station, the page changed again. Sale postponed until further notice. I stood in the aisle with everyone reaching around me for luggage and let out a breath that felt as if I had been holding it since the hotel hallway. Then an email from Henry arrived with a preliminary statement of charges totaling $8,460. Grant sent only one message. "Congratulations." I caught a rideshare from the station. The driver glanced at my suitcase and asked whether I was going somewhere nice. "I'm going home." He looked at the destination on his screen. That's usually the cheaper direction. Our street appeared almost offensively normal. The same boxwood hedges, the same brick sidewalks, the same silver sedan parked half over Mrs. Alvarez's driveway because her visiting cousin never judged the angle correctly. My house looked larger without furniture visible through the front windows. Grant's car was gone. A rectangular sticker clung to the front door where the auction company's sign had been peeled away. Inside, the living room was hollow except for dust outlines and a dead fern I had asked Grant to water. The kitchen faucet still dripped. On the island, Celeste had left 2 champagne flutes beside the pear tart. One glass held a thumb of flat wine. The other had a lipstick mark in Celeste's rose color. I carried both to the sink, then stopped. For years, I had cleaned up whatever Celeste left behind before I even took off my coat. Glasses, receipts, wet towels, the little paper sleeves from her artificial sweetener, folded into hard white triangles and abandoned beside coffee cups. I left the glasses where they were. Upstairs, our bedroom looked ransacked despite the neatness. The chest was gone. So were the lamps. Grant's side of the closet remained full. Mine had been pushed into garment bags so auction staff could photograph the room without sleeves showing. I took my clothes out of the bags, packed 2 suitcases, then sat on the floor between them. Leaving felt dramatic. Staying felt like permission. I called Pauline and told her I needed the rest of the week. "Take it," she said. "The kitchen survived lunch." "Did Reese burn the mushroom stock?" "He enhanced it with carbon." I smiled despite myself. "You safe?" she asked. "Yes." "Is he there?" "No." "Do you want company?" I looked around the strip bedroom. "Not yet." I booked a room at a small extended stay hotel near my office, then changed my payroll deposit to an individual account I had kept since before the marriage. It held less than a month's expenses. Our mortgage and utilities still came from the joint checking account, funded mostly by my paycheck. I didn't transfer what remained. I downloaded 12 months of statements. The password change had blocked the app, not my legal access. The bank restored it after I answered security questions at a branch. The renovation account contained $6,812. Our joint checking held $3,147. There were transfers to Celeste I recognized, $800 for plumber, $1,200 for windows, $500 for groceries. Grant had described each one as a house expense when explaining why he couldn't contribute more that month. I made a list. Then I stopped the automatic payment for Celeste's phone. Her number was attached to our family plan because Grant once said adding a line cost almost nothing. Almost nothing had become $93 a month with device installments and international calling she claimed she never activated. Next was the storage unit. I called the facility and learned the contract was in my name. Celeste had promised the arrangement would last 3 months after she moved to Bellwether House. It had lasted 5 years. The manager explained the notice period. I paid through the required date, emailed formal notice to Celeste and Grant, and included the facility's phone number. Celeste called within 2 minutes. I let it ring. She called again. Then Grant. Then Celeste sent a message. "You are punishing me by threatening my possessions. Think carefully about who you want to be." I looked at the empty rectangles on the carpet. I wrote back, "Your belongings remain secure through September 30th. Please arrange payment or removal directly with the facility." The typing dots appeared, vanished, and returned. "After everything I've done to welcome you into this family." I set the phone down without answering. The front lock turned at 6:15. Grant entered carrying a paper grocery bag and stopped when he saw my suitcases. "So that's it? I booked a hotel. You're leaving." "I'm sleeping somewhere you can't invite bidders." His jaw tightened. I brought dinner. What? Roast chicken. I thought we could sit down like adults. With what table? He placed the bag on the kitchen island beside the champagne glasses. For one instant, I saw him notice them. His hand moved as if to clear them, then stopped. You canceled Mom's phone. I stopped paying for it. You know she uses that number for everything. She can keep the number. The carrier explained how to transfer it. And the storage unit? She has 10 weeks. Those arrangements were part of our household. No, they were part of my labor. His face changed slightly, not with guilt, but with recognition. He was beginning to understand that I had found switches he didn't know existed. You can't make unilateral decisions to prove a point, he said. I looked at him. He rubbed his forehead. Fine, I hear it. No, you heard yourself. The faucet dripped between us. Grant took 2 containers from the grocery bag. Chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes. He had remembered the mustard sauce I liked. I panicked, he said. Mom got the assessment notice and wouldn't consider selling. She was barely sleeping. Every conversation ended with her saying Dad had promised she'd always be secure. Your father has been gone 7 years. You think grief follows a schedule? No, I think bills do. He leaned against the counter. He looked older than he had when I left for Baltimore, but perhaps I had stopped arranging his face into the version I loved. I thought the auction solved 2 problems, he said. It helped Mom, and it got us out from under all that furniture you don't even like. I do like it. You complain about the chairs. One wobbles. You said the cabinet is too dark. I said the dining room was dark. You never use the linens. So you sold the letters with them? I told Henry to empty the cabinet. He assured me they would. He cataloged the contents. I didn't know that. You didn't check. Grant looked down. No. That single admission nearly undid me. Not because it repaired anything, but because it sounded like the man I had spent 11 years believing would eventually tell the truth. Then he said, but I still think stopping the entire sale was reckless. The door closed again inside me. Where is your mother's key? What? To this house. She has a spare for emergencies. I want it back. You're not serious. She used it to host an auction preview. I let her in. Then you can let her in next time. He shook his head. I'm not going to participate in some ritual humiliation. Ask her for the key. No. There was the marriage in 1 syllable. I lifted my suitcases. Grant didn't help. At the hotel, Samuel sent photographs of the cabinet in his workshop. The white carton sat on the table beside it, seal intact. He had placed a clean cloth beneath the scraped foot. I slept until Nolan Price called at 7 the next morning. Nolan had been Grant's friend since college and our accountant for 8 years. He never called before noon if he could send a spreadsheet instead. I got a strange email from Grant, he said. He wants me to classify transfers to Celeste as renovation reimbursements for a loan application. They weren't renovations. I suspected that when one memo said bellwether assessment, I sat up. Nolan continued carefully. Did you authorize $35,000 in transfers? No. He went silent long enough that I could hear him tapping a pen. I told him I wouldn't classify them that way, he said. Why are you telling me? Because the money came from accounts you fund, and because he asked me to make the records say something they don't. It wasn't loyalty exactly. Nolan sounded irritated that Grant had placed him in a position where accuracy required courage. What loan application? I asked. He's trying to cover the auction fees and restore the renovation account before you see the annual statement. I've seen it. Then he's late twice. That afternoon, Henry formally canceled the auction and demanded payment under the consignment agreement. Grant called it my $8,000 tantrum. 2 days later, Nolan forwarded me an invitation Celeste had asked him to distribute among clients. Private household furnishings sale. Saturday, 10 a.m., Hawthorne residence. The photograph showed my front door. At the bottom, in Celeste's looping script, were the words, "Cashier's checks preferred. Serious buyers only." I read the invitation 3 times before calling Nolan. Did Grant know she sent this? He asked me yesterday whether I had clients interested in antiques. They're not antiques, not the things they're selling. I told him that. And you still got the invitation. Celeste has never allowed information to interfere with stationery. I heard embarrassment under the dryness. Nolan had eaten Thanksgiving dinner at our table for 8 years. He had sat in the chair with the wobbling back leg and praised pies I bought from a bakery, while Celeste accepted compliments on the centerpiece. "Did you send it to anyone?" I asked. "No." Who else did she ask? Her realtor, the Bellwether residence list, a couple of designers. So strangers will be back in my house Saturday. Probably fewer strangers with better shoes. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I said, "Will you give me copies of the transfers? You can download them yourself. I need you to explain what Grant asked you to do." Nolan went quiet. "I'm not asking you to choose between us," I said. "Yes, you are." He was right. "I'm asking you to choose between what happened and what Grant wants the records to say." "That sounds better, but it's still a choice." "Then make it." He exhaled. "I'll write an accurate summary. The family attorney I consulted the next morning did not offer me a clever sentence that fixed everything. She gave me a yellow legal pad, asked questions for 90 minutes, and interrupted whenever I said "our money" without identifying the account. "Can I stop the private sale?" I asked. "You can make it very difficult for buyers to believe they're receiving clear ownership. Whether Grant has the right to sell a particular jointly purchased lamp is something a court could spend more time discussing than the lamp deserves. I don't want to spend my life litigating stools." "Then don't. Decide what result you want." "I want him to admit he did this." "That's not a property result." "No. And I can't draft an agreement that compels understanding." She helped me prepare an interim separation proposal and a detailed inventory. It did not punish Grant. That disappointed a part of me I wasn't proud of. It treated the $35,000 transferred for Celeste as an advance to Grant from our joint property. It assigned the auction cancellation charges to him because he had signed the consignment agreement without my authorization. It required mutual written consent before either of us sold household property. Grant could remain in the house for 90 days while arranging to refinance and buy out my share. If he could not, we would list it. My inherited furniture and family papers were mine. The remaining furniture could be divided or sold after we both agreed to the price and buyer. The attorney tapped that line with her pen. "You can't demand the sofa remain emotionally faithful to you. If you don't want it, let it go properly." "I don't want the sofa." "Good. It looks uncomfortable." I had shown her the catalog. The proposal was not self-executing. Grant could refuse, and then we would begin a slower, more expensive process. She made sure I understood that twice. I emailed it to him Friday afternoon. He replied 11 minutes later. "You hired a lawyer?" I wrote back. "I got advice." His answer came immediately. "There's a difference?" I didn't respond. Samuel helped me sort the white carton that evening at his workshop. The linens had been folded by auction staff into hard, unfamiliar rectangles. My grandmother's recipe book lay beneath them, its cloth cover bent backward. The letters were still tied with faded green ribbon. Samuel lifted each item with both hands and checked it against the photographs he had taken before opening the seal. "You don't have to inventory recipes," I said. "I'm inventorying condition." "There's gravy on page 14. Pre-existing gravy." He photographed it. The cabinet stood behind us under warm shop lights. With the doors closed, no one would have known it had spent a day in an auction loading bay. Samuel had cleaned the scrape on the right foot, but left it unrepaired until the insurance question was settled. I touched the pale crescent beneath the left door. "Your grandmother's ring?" he asked. "Yes." "Gold is softer than walnut. It still made the mark." "She opened it every day. That will do it." He slid the restoration file across the work table. The intake photographs showed the cabinet in my old apartment, crowded between a radiator and a window. In one image, Grant's hand rested on the top while Samuel examined the back panel. I had forgotten he was in the photograph. "He knew," I said. Samuel followed my gaze. "Yes." Maybe I kept wanting this to be about what Celeste did because that's easier. Celeste didn't sign the auction contract. No. I closed the file. Samuel did not tell me what to do with my marriage. He asked whether I wanted the cabinet delivered to the hotel or kept in secure storage. Keep it here until I have somewhere permanent. Done. And tomorrow? What about tomorrow? I may need someone to confirm what your records show. He looked at the cabinet, then at me. What time? At 9:30 Saturday morning. Cars already lined our street. Celeste had placed 2 topiary trees beside the front door. A cream card tied to one pot read "Private Sale" in gold lettering. The sticker residue from the auction sign was still visible beneath it. Samuel parked his truck across the street. Nolan pulled in behind him and remained in his car for a full minute before getting out with a folder under his arm. "You invited an audience," Celeste said when she opened the door. She wore a pale gray dress and the rose lipstick from the champagne glass. Behind her, quiet jazz floated through the empty living room. Someone had brought in folding tables with sparkling water and small pastries. "I brought people with relevant information. This is a private home. It's mine too. Grant said you left. I slept elsewhere. That didn't transfer the deed." Her smile tightened. "Must every conversation with you sound like a deposition now?" "Only the ones about who owns what." I stepped inside. My key had still worked, though the chain had been fastened. Celeste must have unhooked it when she saw us from the window. The furniture had returned from Henry's gallery. Price cards sat on the sofa, rug, stools, tables, guest bed, and brass lamp. Grant stood near the kitchen in a blue shirt I had given him for our anniversary. He looked at Samuel first, then Nolan. "You forwarded the invitation," he said to Nolan. "Yes." "You're my friend." "I'm also your accountant." "Not anymore." Nolan nodded once. I assumed. The first buyers arrived at 10, a designer Celeste knew and a couple from Bellwether House. Celeste moved toward them with both arms open. I reached the door first. "Before you purchase anything," I said, "you should know ownership is disputed and I have not consented to a sale." The designer stopped with one foot over the threshold. Celeste laughed. "This is a marital disagreement. Everything being offered was purchased jointly, and my son is fully authorized to sell household furnishings from his home. That authorization is exactly what's disputed." I handed the designer a copy of Henry's cancellation notice. She read the first paragraph, handed it back, and said she would return another time. She did not step inside. The Bellwether couple whispered to each other, then retreated toward their car. "This is harassment," Celeste said. "This is disclosure." More cars arrived. I gave each person the same information. Some left immediately. One man wanted to know whether the prices would drop because of the dispute. Celeste told him the sale was temporarily delayed and closed the door in his face. By 10:20, the jazz was the only thing entertaining anyone. Grant switched it off. "Are you satisfied?" he asked. "No." "What else could you possibly want?" I placed the inventory and separation proposal on the folding table. Nolan set his summary beside them. Samuel added the restoration file. Celeste glanced at the cabinet photographs. "That old thing isn't even here." "That's why it's safe." Grant opened Nolan's summary. "You shared private financial information?" "With an account holder whose money was transferred," Nolan said. "I described the records accurately. I also documented your request to classify the transfers as renovation reimbursements. I asked you a tax question. You asked me to change their purpose." Celeste waved one hand. "Enough. We are talking about furniture, not an audit." "We're talking about $35,000, I said. "You've known that amount all week." "I didn't know Grant had been labeling payments to you as expenses for our house. Your house has increased in value every year. You are hardly suffering. Then your condo has increased too. Sell it." Her face changed. For the first time, the polished hostess disappeared. "I will not be forced out of the last home I shared with my husband. You bought Bellwether after he died. I chose it with what he taught me to value. then value it enough to pay for it. She looked at Grant. "Are you going to let her speak to me this way?" Grant was still reading the proposal. "The assessment money counts against my share?" he asked. "Yes." "You're treating helping my mother like I bought a sports car. I'm treating joint money you spent without my agreement as money you received. And the auction fee is entirely mine. You signed the contract to solve a family emergency. Your mother's bill became an emergency because she refused every ordinary solution." Celeste pulled the proposal toward her. Her eyes moved down the pages quickly. 90 days to refinance?" she said. "That's impossible. Then the house gets listed. You would sell your home, but not a cabinet? The house belongs to both of us. The cabinet is worth $18,000. Then it was generous of you to offer it for $3,500 in your private sale." A flush rose from her neckline. Grant looked up. "You were going to list the cabinet today?" It was an option if she continued being unreasonable. Samuel's estimate is only an estimate. "The cabinet is at my workshop," Samuel said. Celeste turned on him. "You've inserted yourself far beyond your professional role. My professional role is the reason your auction catalog had credibility. It's wood. So is the floor. You haven't tried to sell that yet." Nolan coughed into his hand. Celeste ignored him. "Grant, withdraw more from your retirement account. Pay this ridiculous fee, replace the renovation money, and give me the second installment. Then there is nothing left for her to hold over us." The room went still. Grant stared at her. "The second installment? It's due in November. You said the board was allowing a payment plan. This is the payment plan. How much?" 28. He sat on the arm of the sofa as if his knees had loosened. "You need another $28,000? It protects the property. When the work is complete, values will rise. Where do you think I'm getting it?" Celeste looked toward me before answering. Just a flicker, but Grant saw it. "From the resources available to the family," she said. "My retirement isn't a resource available to you. Your father made sacrifices. So did Mara." The words surprised all of us. Celeste recovered first. "Mara earns more than you. She will be perfectly comfortable." Grant looked down at the papers. "That was the plan, wasn't it? She'd keep paying the mortgage and bills, and the auction would replace what I gave you. We discussed improving the house. You picked the designer because neither of you makes decisions." He gave a short, broken laugh. "You made one." Celeste stepped closer to him. "Do not confuse her performance here with loyalty. I am trying to preserve something your father built. And I was trying to preserve the idea that you needed me." Her face hardened. "I do need you." "No, you need the transfer." She slapped the proposal flat with her palm. "If you sign this, she wins." Grant looked at me. I hated that I understood the question in his face. He wanted me to say there was still a version of this where he signed, apologized, and came home to a marriage bruised but intact. "I didn't bring divorce papers," I said. "I brought an accurate account of what has already happened. We could try counseling. We could have tried a conversation before the auction. I was afraid you'd say no. You were right." He looked toward the window. Outside, another car slowed, saw the topiary and the cluster of people, then continued down the street. "I didn't think of it as stealing," he said. "What did you think it was?" "Making a decision you'd eventually understand. That's the part I can't live with." Celeste said, "Grant, don't sign anything without your own attorney." "That's sensible," I said. "Have one review it. The sale is over either way. If we can't agree, the transfers, auction contract, and property claims go through the formal process." Nolan picked up his folder. Samuel closed the restoration file. Grant read every page while we waited. He did not sign that morning. He called the following Tuesday after meeting with his own attorney. He wanted 6 changes. I agreed to 2. We argued over the house, the fee, and whether the $35,000 was a gift to Celeste or spending by Grant. In the final agreement, it was assigned to his side without either of us pretending it had bought anything for Hawthorne. He signed. The sofa and remaining furniture were sold through a consignment store we chose together. The proceeds paid most of Henry's cancellation charges. Grant covered the rest. He could not refinance the house alone, so it went on the market. Celeste transferred her phone number and moved her belongings out of storage 3 days before the deadline. She sent Grant the bill for the movers. He did not pay it. Bellwether listed her condominium before the second installment came due. She bought a smaller unit in a building with lower fees and told people the move had been her idea. Grant apologized twice. The first time, he said he was sorry for how the auction had made me feel. The second time, after the house sold and the numbers left no room for interpretation, he said, "I thought loving you meant you would keep absorbing what I couldn't handle." That apology was true enough to hurt. It wasn't enough to make me stay. Samuel delivered the walnut cabinet to my new apartment on a rainy Thursday. The living room was smaller than my old dining room, and we had to remove the cabinet doors to make the turn past the kitchen. Once it stood against the wall, he polished the brass pull with his sleeve. "You still want the scrape left visible?" he asked. "For now." He nodded and handed me the restoration file. I put it in the top drawer with my lease, my bank records, and the final property agreement. Then I added the brass key to the apartment. When I closed the drawer, my knuckle rested for a moment in the pale crescent my grandmother's ring had worn beneath the handle. The mark caught the afternoon light. I turned the key in my own front door and heard the lock answer only to me.